Tuesday, everybody. Here we are. And so we've been running this thing called the Mosh Pit. And the idea is to ship a autonomous business every 14 days, basically 2 a month. Um, and it's a forcing exercise. So anybody who's ever tried to like launch a business, it's hard. It also can drag on forever. You pretty much will allow yourself, um, most times if you go to launch something, a lot of room to, you know, let it scope creep over here and seep over there. And, next thing you look back and you're, 90 days or 3 months later and you haven't gone very far. So part of the goal with the mosh pit is to use the compression of time as a forcing exercise to ship products, businesses, ideas, and so forth. So we are hard at it now. We ideate many businesses at once. We research them, ideate them, and so there's a couple of different things that are going on here as part of the current cohort. Um, and the one that we have been hot on the heels of for the past 2 weeks is called Bonus Link. And for those in the audience, you can check it out at bonuslink.io. And what I'll do is, Kevin has been leading Bonus Link. It's his baby, his concept. He brought the idea to us, and we said, "Yeah, let's do it." So, Kevin, I'm just going to turn it over to you, and why don't you tell us what it is, the problems that we're solving, and feel free if you want to share your screen and show anything. Let's unpack it a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, and Bob, Calvin, feel free to jump in here as well. Instrumental in building and shaping this, along with Dave's help too. I'm gonna share my screen just so we got something in the background here. Yeah, so Bonus Link, we are helping unlock the value in long form video content. So taking these amazing 30-minute, hour-long plus videos that creators are putting up on YouTube, for example, and breaking that down into the best quotes, takeaways, links that they mention, and resources into this snackable content, and putting that all on a single bonus link page that can be used as the link in the description for that video on YouTube. So now in one central place. That creator has all of these resources, as you can see an example here on the screen, for the viewer to jump in, follow along. Maybe they're trying to catch one of the different tools that were mentioned in the video, as well as other resources that they can dive deeper in. There's also the challenge here of these so much great content out there by some trusted sources. It's really hard for me to find 2, 3, 4 hours every night to watch, four different 60-minute videos. I would really love to be able to jump in and find the right takeaways from the trusted creators that I follow. And so this is a tool to be able to do that. So this is really useful and powerful for creators that have communities that create courses, for coaches or consultants that are using long form video content to build trust and demonstrate expertise to their prospects, as well as even SaaS products that are doing the same and ultimately trying to build expertise, build community, build brand, teach as well. So we see a lot of really great opportunities here, and we've jumped in with a few different creators as we tackle solving these problems, and have gotten some really great feedback. Also, here we literally launched this yesterday, and it's Dave called out. We built this over the last 14 days, so super fast iteration to get to this first product and get it in people's hands.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, I know, Bob, you worked extensively on this. Calvin, you worked extensively on it. I would love to hear just like some of the secret sauce stuff in the back end that is that that makes it run and that we think is interesting. And what like some what do you guys think are like some of the favorite features that you've baked in here?
Sure, I can start, Bob, if you want.
I was going to say you take agentic, and I can talk about memory.
Sure, we can do that. Um, so I think what's interesting, and if you look at bonus link, is there's a lot of things that need to happen in the background to kind of make that analysis. As Kevin already talked about it, we're getting out the links, takeaways, quotes, but also like images and a lot of other content. And I think we wanted to have a very good, reliable, multi-step flow. So we relied on, we tested a very new kind of server structure for that to build agentic workflows, which works amazingly well, that we're very happy with. It's a little bit of a shout out to Mastra. That's kind of helping us power a bit of this. And a lot of work really got into, I think there's a lot of people talking about agentic and AI agentic flows today. I think what's often missing is the quality of it, right? Like anyone can tell an LLM to turn a piece of content into another piece of content. What we find often, or find the good things, find the good stuff in it. And most of the times, it's not really good though. So we really extensively spend a lot of time on making sure that the outcome quality is really good and that you actually get the things out of it that you want, right? And so a lot of that was done through you know putting yourself into the shoes of the user and really looking, is that fun, do I use this, right? So I put a lot of content links in there, tested it, figured out, is that really sort of what I would like to see from this video? Is this helpful to me? Can I see myself adding value in that? And then really honing in on those flows and making them better. That was a fun experience.
For sure. A lot of learnings too. I mean, one of the big learnings that we came across was precisely wrapped around that point you made, which is it's easy to decompose one thing into another. It's a lot harder to decompose one thing into meaningful sub pieces that are in their own right meaningful, and even harder to then extrapolate that across like your whole video library. And one of the goals we set out to do was if Calvin had a YouTube video, maybe he was doing a podcast or something and talking to somebody interesting, and they were talking about subject X, right? Not to be conflated with Elon Musk's X. If there was another video where the topic of X came up again, those things likely could be related. And as a consumer of the content, I would benefit being able to sort of jump around that network and explore more about content topic X versus having to watch every long form video coming from Calvin and sort of mentally or manually extract that information about X. Can we create little bridges between topically relevant portions of content so a user who is interested in X can just jump between all of the little nuggets of brilliance that Calvin is sharing about X, no matter what video it might live in? How do we help the viewers and fans of video channels explore and discover those topics, not just for things they know they're interested in, but things maybe they don't know they're interested in, but Calvin thinks they might be because these things are interesting to him, and so on. And so part of day zero a couple weeks ago when we set out to build bonus link was thinking about what does ideal memory layer look like for agentic systems. And we made a few decisions along the way. And the first one is let's not settle on database ontology, right? Like using the things that are out there is wonderful, and they're all incredibly powerful lately, as we'll see continue, I think. Um, but we were sort of faced with a couple early decisions, like do we go after only vector search and use something like a Lance DB, which is like super powerful and well optimized? Do we, go rows and columns, GraphQL, maybe a hybrid with some PG vector in there through like a Hasura that could get us closer? But we decided to go back to the drawing board and do some sort of grounding research, and have been aware of SurrealDB for a while and decided to kick the tires on that, and just sort of blown away by Surreal's capability as a multimodal DB. And so our ability to store relational data, think rows and columns, NoSQL data, think Mongo, think time series DB like Crate, so on, and vector, all within the same record row, not different places in this DB system where vector is going to be over here and whatever over here. We wanted to achieve a state where all of our data is sort of commingled by record across these different modalities and be able to effectively query it so that we could achieve that use case where X over here is related to X over here. And so built on top of Surreal, we built Mesh OS, which is essentially a knowledge management layer on top of that multimodal DB that abstracts all of the hard stuff that we've sort of picked up along the way over the last months and years, whittled all the way down to essentially 2 function calls, remember and recall. And the remember function can take essentially anything you throw at it, whether that's embeddings, NoSQL-based metadata, or columnar data on a record, and stored effectively, creating all of the chunks for embeddings and so on, indexing, and then the recall equally as powerful. Give me all records that talk about topic X, but specifically it was said by Calvin, right? So we're sort of commingling the vector space and the relational space together. So far, so good. It's working pretty well. We don't know where the edges are on this yet necessarily on that part of it. It's also playing kind of a sub role in the overall value prop of Bonus Link currently. But if you get into Bonus Link, take a look at the Explore tab on a video that you import, and you can start to see that concept manifesting. You'll see this really cool 3-dimensional graph visualization where you can literally see these connections between things. And that's really what we're trying to evolve as we go here as like a recommendation engine sort of play.
It's pretty unique. I mean, to be able to cross-reference content across videos, I don't think it exists. I've never seen anything like it, right? So I mean, and as opposed to everything, and it's true, especially as, especially when you get into topics that take place over recurring topics that take place over weeks and months or years, being able to thread the needle between those different videos to find different points at which you're talking about the same topic is really unique. And so that's really what the memory enables. And then I guess like you said, so Props OS, excited because that's sort of in our bag of tricks now. So we can use Mesh OS, that Mesh OS library for many products moving forward. And so that gives us sort of a shared memory system that's super robust and it's agentic to the core. So super excited about that.
Yeah, really cool. I'm excited for it too. And it works a lot like the human brain. If I said blue dog today, it'd be interesting to see what your first reaction in your mind was to that statement. And in that way, Mesh OS kind of works that way, right? Here's a concept, like spider out from that.
Right. Yeah, super fun. Are you going to show it off?
Yeah, I was going to show the specifically what we're talking about right here, right? Of the connections and the 3D viewer here that Bob has put together to show that knowledge graph initial representation here of all the content.
And also, how we map it all and so forth. It's amazing.
Yeah, and then this only has one node in it for this video, but like a tree of those videos and the content that spiders off of that, right? And then I was also just pulling up a little behind the scenes of, what does that look like as we then also start to do related topics out to the end viewer and thinking about that in ultimately this knowledge graph. It's super powerful, and then you got to zoom it back in so somebody can interface with it, right, and get the content. So kind of maybe it looks like for lack of a better term, tags that you're able to then expand out that topic that is pertinent to that particular video. So it's contextually aware, automatically effectively tagged, segmented, and then the different tag segments that appear in those other videos on that same topic, in this example, are all right there. And so it really just starts to blow your mind when you go, this could be a dynamic playlist of all the segments where, in this case, Greg Eisenberg talks about Replit across all of his videos that he puts out. And that gets very, very powerful from an education and awareness and training and content lead funnels standpoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and something cool to kind of show if you just take a second since we're riffing here, go back to that explore page and click on the green
Yeah.
bubble. Yeah. And so this is a great example of the transcript itself. So the full transcript of the entire video, and then boom, do you see that expand? So maybe zoom out and kind of rotate around a little bit. As we run chunking process, we're taking that transcript, which was symbolized by a small bubble, but behind that transcript are a lot of snippets, right? So we boil them down into like 30-second snippets then as we chunk it. And so every single one of those is a first-class citizen that's searchable, right? So start with generic concept. We could find a chunk in this brain and then work our way back out to the big assets versus having to sort of search just that full hour-long transcript, which isn't as efficient. And a lot of things can get lost along the way because you're kind of sharing one embedding for a really long blob of text versus creating a really targeted embedding for a small piece of text and then relating those things together. So that is a perfect example of what SurrealDB and MeshOS provide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So fantastic. I want to make sure I think you guys have been riffing on switching gears here. You guys have been riffing on a new idea, and like all good ideas, we're gonna start with starting to validate and see whether we can get some early feedback and initial and initial sort of um, traction out there. And tell us about that. You guys been working on the past even like less than 24 hours, right?
Yeah, it's been about 12 hours, I think.
12 hours, right?
Yeah, right. I'll share my screen. We can just riff on this too. So super early, but introducing okgotcha.com. And clearly, I think everybody sort of realizes this. And a lot of people say it out loud. We haven't seen a lot of investment here yet, but it feels like a no-brainer, which is human in the loop, right? We're always talking about how humans are still going to be important in the future. We maybe debate on why and how that manifests, but at scale, as organizations continue to grow and leverage AI for scale, for speed, for innovation, they're going to start accumulating a lot of workflows in their organization. And there's this question, it's sort of existential in nature. Would you give your AI workflows the big red button to just execute anything they want, right? These aren't one-shot prompts, right? Working with like GPT as an example. When we talk about workflows, we're talking about agentic workflows that do lots of things in steps, right? They're doing things like generating brand assets on your behalf and executing campaigns with those assets it's generating. I don't know any CMO in the world that would want that to happen automatically without the ability to sort of proof it, right? Because brand equity is hard to build, but it's really easy to fuck up. And so,
True.
right, so human in the loop feedback is a no-brainer, and everybody's been talking about this for years, and all of a sudden it sort of hit us like this feels like a very slim middleware that can sit between AI agentic workflows and people in the organization itself. And that's what OK Gotcha is. A little tongue in cheek there, but like if you're interfacing with a AI and you need something done, it's going to respond to you in with a bunch of words, and you're just like, okay, gotcha. But the general idea is really simple, drop in SDK or MCP integration. So a high horsepower dev can have full control over when they might think or what policy dictates as a moment an approval request is required,
Mm-hmm.
right? And send that over to OK Gotcha. OK Gotcha in the center can do things like ping a known person in the organization based on rule sets across any of the communication channels they might be using, such as Slack, Discord, email, let's say Salesforce, CRMs in general, etc., and essentially wait for response from that user and or let's say approver, and that approver might say, "Yep, good, okay, gotcha, thumbs up," and essentially a webhook would go back to the agent and they can continue their work, like execute or maybe transfer money, things of high risk, right? We need to wrap here. Um, or okay, gotcha, will support rule sets. So here's something I'm about to do. The agent says to okay, gotcha says, what are they trying to do? Who's the best approver or team to ping here for approval? And so traditional workflows can pick up there. Maybe it's a round robin, maybe it's based on the expertise required or the actual sign off level within the organization hierarchy, red, yellow, green, and so on, to find the right person. Meanwhile, that workflow in on the other side is just sort of waiting for it. Now, there's also the case, which I think will be seen more than just a straight up approval, which is uh, disapproval with feedback. So I like to think of the marketer here. I, as an AI agent, I'm an agent. I say, hey, I just built this advertisement we're about to take to market. Does it look good? CMO or director of marketing, whomever has the approval, says, it's not quite right. Here's what I'd like you to change. And they can send that feedback back to the agent, just like they were sitting there in Cursor or ChatGPT or Gemini, provide that feedback, and then the workflow can pick up and continue to crank. That loop persists. All right, what about this iteration? What do you think? And then the CMO is like, okay, looks good. And then they can continue on their workflow. So that's what we're going after, right? Like essentially a mechanical Turk for approvals, leveraging all the existing systems within an organization, really low calorie, low friction integration so that folks can use the tools they're already using to simply get alerted to an approval that requires their attention and either approve it or provide that feedback to continually, let that workflow continue to run and improve over time.
Yeah, this is great, and this is something that we've seen and felt in our own small organization, right? Let alone the other partners that we've worked with as well. And the combination of there are workflows that you always want approvals over in different stages, and then there's also, especially in this agentic world, as you called out, Bob, there will be just more and more and more workflows in every single organization in a positive way, right? Adding more automation. And so imagine a world where you're adding a new workflow a day, maybe a couple a day, right? It could be the speed of a typical organization. And you need to get confidence that you've got that one. And so you're using the approval back and forth, iterating on it, getting it to the place where it needs to be, and then giving it more autonomy and more automation for the next time, and ultimately getting it to whatever degree you're desiring, right? It may be really, really close to full autonomy. It may be great. This is the 80% that we were targeting, and it's still super useful to have that safety checks and iteration to get there, because the iteration's hard if you don't have those like really good um, feedback loops that are repeatable, and you're adding another new process. I mean, we've bumped into that before. We go, okay, well, how do we get the feedback into the thing? And it's really hard and really slow. And the answer to that is, well, you give the feedback to whoever's doing the prompt engineering and the other optimizations and the workflow itself, whichever one of us that may be, and then waiting on a cycle of feedback and doing that again. And even as fast as we move, we're still, constrained, and we're still not happy with that speed, let alone what an average organization might turn that and say, great, I'll get that back to you in a couple of days, next week. The outsourced contractor says when I get to it, right? And then that's just to get one loop to see if you've even got the automation that you need. And that's just not going to be the speed of how quickly organizations need to add automations every week.
Yeah, and maybe Calvin could speak to this a little bit because we've been chatting about it around sort of the brain layer with Mesh OS, right? But there's, improvement wise for an LLM, you can do things like fine tune it, right? Well, what is fine tuning? That's training data, inputs, outputs, right? Rebuild the model based on that, right? It's a little bit different than saying providing feedback to a novel ask to an LLM. Um, let's use the marketer example. Create me a let's go old school, a print mailer. I'm gonna mail out to people's mailboxes, right? And the LLM iterates on it and says, "Here you go," and the marketer says, "That's not right. We can't do this. We can't do this. We shouldn't do this. The brand font size is off. Whatever it is, right?" That's a little bit different than fine tuning. That's not an input or an output, right? It's a rule, more or less. And so we've been thinking about this other side of air quote fine tuning, this notion of like evaluation loops. And so we think the feedback mechanism here drives the data collection for eval loops. So next time you ask the LLM to build you, let's say, a print mailer, right? It can reference the evaluation feedback it's already gotten, even if it's not necessarily as part of its fine-tuned model, if that makes sense. I think it's equally as valuable than say just fine-tuning with inputs and outputs, but collect these rule sets of iteration on novel asks and being able to reference it based on a new novel ask that isn't the exact same as the last one and isn't really fine-tunable, if that makes sense.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So just in terms of sort of the process, um, validating, what does that look like? Right. I mean, what do we like now? Okay. Like, um, what do we think about in terms of validating the concept? What are the sort of exercises that we go through? Uh, what are the determinations that we need to make and the hypothesis that is on the table?
Yeah, I think first and foremost is aligning to our ICPs, our ideal customer profiles, right? This one is a little bit ubiquitous, but clearly there's going to be some ICPs that we target early, decision makers, right? Around organizations that are at least starting their investments within AI. I think that's probably most mid market and above at this point. So do we target, C-suite in the mid market, maybe product leaders in the enterprise that are thinking about these things, and maybe not specifically, but more around like risk management of it, right? Those are usually the starting points. So like, where are the risk edges, and where am I going to mess up and cause a big problem for our org, like accidentally deleting stuff or sending money where it doesn't need to go or whatever it might be. So targeting the ICP first and foremost. In this sprint, we're going to take a different approach than we did with Bonus Link. With Bonus Link, we were kind of thinking about technology first, partly for feasibility of the thing as we were ideating the business side with Kevin. But we got to building too early on that. So we're going to take a different approach here. We're going to try and build our tribe first, right? We're going to go out and find those ICPs that this is meaningful for, and ask them to join us in the room as we put it together, right? Bring their feedback in and actually tailor it around the early adopters that see the value in the platform. So early goals is, uh, we're going to have a reservation on here. So reserve your early access. And that's really the core, like day zero KPI is um, early access signups, partly as a metric, but more so as a networking objective so that we can branch out to these folks that see value in this and we can work with them to really tailor it into a valuable solution.
Yeah,
Is it?
that's
It's an interesting question, right? Because when you when you look at the varying degrees of enterprises, and I did a deep analysis with GPT Deep Research yesterday. And if you look at sort of the spending and stuff, I mean, obviously, the ones that have higher sort of compliance requirements, etc., might have like a general higher need, but are also technically a little bit less accessible. Like if you look at financial services, or healthcare support services, where the entry and the sales cycles are probably long, which is then I think closely followed by when you said more the enterprise SaaS, which I think is a very good target. The interesting question that I have is I think they're probably a little bit further along in terms of their experimentation stage on playing with AI agents, right? Deeper in that decision funnel, and now at the step where they're trying to put it to production, right? Like if you're trying to get out of the we've run entrepreneurship sort of or small experiments in the R&D department into actually implementing it in your business cases, this is where you're going to hit those roadblocks very quickly. So I would assume that, you know, an organization is not in a nascent have just thought about the idea of AI, but they must have run a couple of experiments. And I think in that scenario, like you said, the decision maker, I think, is one important. I think what's not to be overlooked is definitely also the developer. Like, so I think there's an
Yeah.
argument to be made that this is a bottom up motion as well, because that I think, especially in something that is as sort of cutting edge as the AI, I would assume a lot of the reliance of decision making also falls on sort of the developer teams, or at least like, you know, recommendations, I should say, not the decision making, but the recommendations.
Interesting point too, right? Like you're probably right. Like less red tape as you go downstream in
Mhm.
size. So think mid market, SMB, solopreneurs, right? Way less red tape to make a decision. You go up into the enterprise, especially public companies, right? They have a lot of compliance, a lot of policy wrapped around decisions. That's usually why those big container ships are hard to turn in the ocean,
Mhm.
right? It takes a long time to get everybody's approval and sign off on things, right? And so if they are delayed in execution around AI, they clearly know the value of it, but they may be hamstrung a bit in terms of being able to execute because of the red tape and compliance and the worry around the risk. Does this help unblock them to go after AI because now they have this sort of safeguard layer in front of everything they build going out? Maybe it's a catalyst.
Yeah, it's got to be right. I mean, you can. There's definitely boardrooms full of folks in suits going, well, but what if, but what if, but what if, right?
Yeah.
Um, and there's a lot of interest for sure. Like we know that there's a ton of interest within, especially large, clunky organizations for where agents can make a difference. And then the biggest barrier to that is uh, control, right? And people are freaked out by things that they don't have control over. Freaked out by, I mean, it's taken. You think of like even like basic like marketing automation, which has been around. I mean, we've been doing now marketing automation for 20 years, and it's taken
Yeah.
um, that long even for people to like CMOs and other people to begin to give up control over um, over. You know, it's funny. This is a funny story. I once did a I once did a campaign. We were trying to sell email marketing to the World Wrestling WWE. It's WWE or WWF. Anyways, and they said it was they were laughing because I'm like, you know, it's like you would think, hey, it's an email, right? It's an email, like an HTML email, right? And the marketers, they were like, man, you don't get it. Like, we need to print this thing out onto a big sheet of paper and take it into the CEO's office to sign off on, right? Like, that's it. Like, we have to print it out and he has to go sign off on it, right? And then once he signs off in writing, then we can go back to our desks and actually send the thing. And if he has changes, we got to go back to make the changes, print it out, go walk into his office and get him to sign it again. And so like these are big barriers. The human in the loop and the need for a human to look at something, make decisions, um, is real, right? Very real, especially when it comes to marketing and brand and this sort of stuff. And so, well, on one hand, you know, AI is great for putting out content. It's not always great for putting out great content. And so I think that this sort of solution can really start to solve that, right? Human in the
Yeah.
loop. It's hard to imagine a world that it's hard to imagine a world that is fully agentic end to end.
We think it's ubiquitous, right? Think about what does your day look like in a couple years from now, right? If you're at a, let's say, a technology provider, so think think information technology, like a CRM, like a whatever, right? Most people are using software all day that are outside the labor side, right? What does your day look like? You're going to be a stakeholder as you are today. You're tasked with goals and objectives that you have to meet or you'll get fired, right? The difference is you're going to operate more like a supervisor, right? Like if you had a team all along, right? I know let's say you're an individual contributor today. Tomorrow you're a supervisor, a manager, but your subordinates will be workflows, right? Or really intelligent agents. We don't know yet. But what does your day look like, right? It's supervision of their work, just like any other manager, right? Is what got done today? Where are we falling behind? Are we on critical path? Are we hitting our goals? Are we on track to hit our goals? Are we falling behind? How do we course correct? That's your new role. And you'll be course correcting with these agents in real time. How's that going to work? The answer is, okay, gotcha. Hopefully.
Boom. Yeah, this is great. The one of the things that is y'all keep driving into, I know it's been 12 hours, so is y'all keep driving into validation is continue to zoom in, recommendation, continue to zoom into the first ICP, first killer use case where we can just crush it, right? Like can we wax poetic for all the places that we can put this and all the problems that we've, bumped into ourselves or with clients in the last 2 years. So there's no shortage of places to put it. I look forward to just crushing the first one that hundreds of people are trying to rip this out of our hands to go do and expand into all the others, right? So that's as we're at a day -1 or whatever we want to phrase this as initial validation, things for us to keep in mind as we keep iterating on the mosh pit process and doing this, right? So this is a little bit of learnings from bonus link over the last couple of weeks. Pull that nugget out there.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, it's interesting. Like, I think as we triangulate on the ideal customer profile for this, because I think you have, you almost need to be at the architectural stage where somebody is designing the agentic system, right? It's hard to put approvals in afterwards, right? As an afterthought. Well, and so when you think about like, well, who is designing these agentic systems? It is devs and architects, and it's my mind quickly goes to some of the enterprise service providers of different sorts, and enterprise from the perspective of like, well, they're the ones who have budgets to pay somebody to design an agentic system. I mean, the other side is that, I guess the other side is startups, right? And is there a place to think about as we think of validating? Is there a place where there's a startup solution in here as well, right? I'm gonna like an embedded solution, right? So, and you can imagine that there is like people who are building an AI product. Um, would it make sense like okay gotcha is sort of embedded in the system as a tool for, and then it sort of is embedded and it goes it goes away as far as as far as on our side of the fence, but then they can include it in the tool. So those are two things that come to mind for me for ideal customer profiles for it.
Embedded OEM for sure, right? I mean, clearly in the age of vibe coding, most of the products that we're seeing launched just in general are agentic, right? And so here's a solution to drop right in. In terms of adding it into existing workflows, that was part of the reasoning behind a two-prong approach, one with an SDK, an API. So developers can put it into their like raw agentic workflow as they're building something net new. But the other side of that coin is MCP. And that's why MCP exists, is that we can attach the okay gotcha MCP to any agentic system, right? And then it's just a function of changing the system prompt ever so slightly, which is in these specific scenarios, you must use the okay gotcha MCP to request approval. And then that way you can instantly integrate it with any existing workflow. Now, will it work 100% of the time? Not sure. It's probably not a small tweak to the prompt, but maybe an eval workflow or a eval loop after that to make sure it happened before execution, things like that. But
Yeah, that's an
Yeah.
interesting bottom up go to market motion, right? Of letting people that are not at the architect level or the overall system design, but I just we gravitate towards marketing because we have a lot of background experience there in systems, but it's also we also know how many approvals are in marketing processes, and so being able to let a director, a manager of whatever channel drop this into their processes and get started on the workflows that they're building, because like you said, Bob, they're overseeing their work and their goals that they're tasked with, regardless of the tools and resources that are given to them by the organization. So, man, if I'm sitting in that seat, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get it done, be the best at it, and give them the shot to be able to go grab this, right, plug it in as an MCP into whatever. That's kind of another question I wrote down of what is the UI that they are using today or would be using in that scenario to do that, and jump back and forth. And is it Slack? Is it Claude? Is it something that we haven't seen yet because it's coming out in the next 3 months? It'll change everything, right? So that there's something there. I mean, Gumloop, even maybe it's inside of other workflow builders, right? That might be the place that they could drop it in and still be a bottom up builder and just get their stuff done. And then, like you said, people are tapping them on the shoulder, going, "How are you doing this? What's going
That,
on?" Right, and can spread from there.
that's where my mind went, was like, um as a connector inside of Zapier, and you think of like you think of the tools that we've run into inside of Make or inside of Zapier or whatnot, but like at the point that somebody is creating a workflow, like that's when it's like, oh, how do I, that's at the point that somebody is creating some sort of agentic workflow, is the point that they're like, this needs to go over here and to ping this person and get approval. And so it'd be an interesting, partner play, to land inside of a Zapier, inside of a Make as a connector, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because these are almost like very different sort of ICPs, right? When you think
Very
about it,
different.
it's kind of interesting
Yep.
when you the one scenario that we talked about, Bob, which is the having sort of the decorator functions and the webhooks and stuff. So basically, if you think about an agentic system, right? So you have your agent, and your agent is actually agentic, meaning it decides on its own. Like, it obviously has a guideline and prompts, etc., but it decides when and how and where to call a specific tool or function, right? So that's the example. So where the agent says, oh, this is a customer support case that might need a refund, right? So I'm going to call the refund function, right? Or this is a customer support case that actually is just an inquiry where I can get something from knowledge and return that, right? So in this case, the agent makes the decision what to do, right? And it could be a multi-step process, it could be organic. And so when you do like a decorator, for example, what you basically say is, if that function is called, require approval, right? So that means if the agent decides to to issue a refund, right, that refund function has sort of a decorator and is covered that whenever this is called, some human approver with a predefined condition will be called to approve it, right? So what you have here is you have a 100% guarantee, and I'm saying 100% in an agentic world, right, that if the agent tries to refund, you will be able to issue approval, right? Then you have the other side, which is, okay, I have my predefined step-by-step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 workflow that we've talked about, right? Sort of deterministic with AI in the middle, where I really insert a step into it. So like the non-agentic side, you would say, where I insert a step in the middle and say, okay, at this specific point in time, you must require approval, right? And then you have the other side where you say, okay, I will specifically ask the agent that whenever the agent thinks that approval might be required, I will ask for approval, right? Which is a 95% or 90% chance of success, right? Because agents can make mistakes. LLMs are not 100% reliable. So these are
Yeah.
sort of the three main scenarios. And if you think about them, there's, like you already highlighted, right? There's very different ICPs. Like this sort of playing with the truly agentic kind of way is likely more people like, you know, what we have been trying in like the startup land, where people actually try to live in the autonomous space but realize that they need approval in certain scenarios. Then sort of the entire workflow approval mechanism build, which I think is a lot more sort of incumbent by nature, right? And then the fully agentic decision making with 95%, where I personally have a little bit of reservations just because you can't guarantee 100%. And if you're talking about approval required, not having 100% is probably going to be a tough sell. That's
People,
my hunch, right?
yeah, people struggle with non-determinist. I think it's actually the thing that people struggle most with agents and AI in general is non-deterministic outcomes, especially in
Although
business.
you're right, and I think if you have, you would probably see his approvals more as guardrails. I think
Yeah.
that sort of makes it easier to wrap your head around, but it's still the problem remains a fairly similar one. Yeah. What I
Yeah.
would be very curious, I think we've done a lot of competitive research around sort of more the agentic side of things. I think where I would like to extend the market analysis and research is potentially around anything related to, you know, approval processes and standard workflows, to kind of, you
Yeah.
know, tap more on the sort of, you know, Sapia Nation make side of things on how do people handle approvals in non-agentic cases at the moment.
And
I
also
feel
like SOP creators, standard operating procedure like creators too. I think because I that's the word I wrap around this a lot is like what is the SOP of the business, of that process, of that department. And so even rules are SOPs, right? You're like the font is this size, this is how we do this part. That is an SOP that then happens to actually cut across multiple workflows, which are each SOPs as well, right? So it's kind of it's workflows all the way down. Like this isn't new in business. This is the most efficient operators do this, right? So this it's just a matter of and honestly, we're actually have the opportunity to bring more determinism to it by inserting these automations than what is there today with the humans that are operating these, right? So at the end of the day, there's some level of trust and delegation to humans that are already doing all these jobs, and now it's a matter of providing enough trust that they can get the outputs out of these systems that they can then put their name behind, right? Right. We talk about somebody sitting in a seat, they're responsible for an outcome, they're responsible for what's coming out, and they need to be able to feel like they signed off on it or could defend it. And you know, nothing is perfect in business, and usually speed is a tilt towards speed over safety to a degree in different industries is the way to win. Um, and finding the sweet spot for each industry.
Yeah, we
non-deterministic outcomes, but with deterministic quality assurance.
Yeah.
we know
deterministic workflows, right? Like that's the interesting part, because even if we tread that middle line that we've, you know, been discussing quite a while, is if you're in the middle line where you have AI components or LLMs generating certain pieces of content somewhere in your workflows, you still definitely want the approval workflows, even though if your workflow is deterministic, because you have non-deterministic output somewhere in your process, right? Like if the AI generates some form of content, someone will want to put their eyes on it. It's the same, you know, whether it's an SDR email or a marketing piece of content.
Yeah, I mean, so we know a number of CTOs and CPOs, and I would say that what we know is that they're the ones who are sort of charged with the AI digital transformation of the organization. And I think that from a validation perspective, we could whip up a list of some of those people. My mind goes to Melody Hildebrand or Brian Wade or Ed Federici, or, you know, and you can name some others, and put in front of them, see what they think would be a good place to start.
Yep.
So,
great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
The other tactic that I wanted to share with y'all as you're doing the validation that I saw today was really cool. It's basic but valuable. Micro, this new app that's like a email CRM app that is in waitlist today. I signed up, right? They send me the email that says you're on the wait list, and then they ask the question, what's my biggest pain, right? They worded it very nicely of you can jump the list if you reply this email and share how do you wish your email, CRM, or sales pipeline was different?
Mm.
Right? What's your biggest pain? I thought it was a good, nice little wording. And because the bar was super low, I replied. I gave him an answer. Right? It was a mid-level thought answer, but it gave him a starting point, right, from my point of view. So I'd love for us to collect the, hey, what's your biggest pain point from each one of those waitlist people that comes in is pretty valuable in the open-ended response, right? Because then you can investigate further.
I think you just came up with another whole nother sprint idea too there, by the way.
Dude, this product's all the way down.
And the three of us know email marketing really well, right? Like this notion of like, do not reply, or we had the autoresponders back in the day, which basically just responded with, nobody maintains this account. Don't reply to this account. What if you could? And what if it kicks off the workflow, right? Like marketing messages have a new life. Just reply to your coupon email with more questions, and it just replies back with the answers, right? Does that get you closer to taking action? Answer is yes, probably, right? Even less friction than having to go to a website or open a chat or whatever. Like just in the mode of which you received the ask, you can respond in it without having to force the user to go use a different tool because that's what you thought that was your solution to the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
100%. So we're at the top of the hour. This has been great. I mean, we covered bonus link. We covered okay, gotcha, which is new on deck. What we're doing around each of those and pushing them forward. And I made a number of reach outs today through LinkedIn and Twitter and otherwise, showing people bonus link. We're doing on Thursday demo day, and so we're inviting people to the demo day on Thursday. I'll be sure everybody gets a link here for Riverside, so that way you guys can pass it around. It should be the same studio link that we're on right now. If you have a conversation with somebody and you want to hand it to them, or send a calendar invite or whatnot, be my guest. And so super looking forward to it. And then we're going to do these streams daily, just as check-ins to talk about what we're doing and show and tell. So excited to keep it moving.
Ditto.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, and be sure to check out the bonus link of this video when we post the video, and you can skip right to all the gold. That's why we don't have a script, because we know bonus link will pull out all the bullshit and only push the cool stuff that we talked about.
It's true. Yeah, I can't wait. We definitely will. So that's a whole. One of these days we'll do a session just on our own work streams and stuff like that, because I think it's interesting, and how we're dog fooding bonus link, and so yeah, once we'll get. I will make sure that this gets run through the ringer and shared out to everybody. So
Cool.
Bonus link in the description below.
That's right.
Awesome. All right. Thank you all, and have a fantastic day, fantastic morning, fantastic evening, wherever you are.
See you guys.
See you guys.
It's
See ya.